Hello everyone! Today we are going to learn about a very interesting auto repair project. The skilled woman started working on a heavy dump truck. Without hesitation, she climbed up the chassis, crawled under the car to reach the transmission. With skillful hands, she disassembled the gear shift joints, carefully unscrewed and loosened the bolts. This was a hard job, requiring a lot of force to remove the stubborn parts. She crawled under the car and took out her power tools. A wrench quickly removed the large bolts holding the drive shaft. A few hard taps with the hammer and wrench were enough to separate the corroded parts. She moved around the heavy transmission, removing every connection that held it to the chassis. Next, she placed a large drum to catch the old oil, deftly removing the drain plug and letting the black oil drain out. After draining the transmission fluid, she removed the final mounting bolts, her hands now greasy from the laborious task. To handle the massive weight, she installed a chain hoist. Carefully wrapping the chain around the transmission, she slowly and safely lowered the entire transmission assembly from the undercarriage to the workshop floor. The real diagnostic work began now. On the ground, she used a torque wrench to unbolt the transmission housing. Using a pry bar and hammer, she carefully pried the transmission housing apart, revealing the intricate gearing system inside. She continued to disassemble, carefully taking apart parts to find and fix the problem. The gearbox is now on the shop floor. The woman begins the complicated process of disassembly. She uses needle nose pliers to carefully remove a small retaining clip from the main shaft. A few hard taps with a hammer and chisel separate the synchro shaft from the gear assembly. With the parts separated, she moves on to the important cleaning process. Each gear, bearing, and part is immersed in a large tub filled with cleaning solution. She carefully scrubs each part with a brush, removing years of accumulated grease and dirt. Even the large, heavy gearbox housing is cleaned inside and out. After cleaning, she uses an air compressor to blow each part dry, ensuring no moisture or debris remains. Now the reassembly can begin. She takes fresh green grease from the bucket and spreads it evenly over the new bearings before carefully placing them in the housing. A hammer and screwdriver are used to install the bearings gently but firmly. She then installed the new shaft and gear, tapping another bearing into place precisely. She deftly used pliers to secure the new bearing. The reverse gear and its shaft were installed, and she painstakingly reassembled the selector forks and rods. With the internals in place, she applied a thin coat of liquid gasket sealant to the mating surfaces of the covers to ensure a tight seal. The covers were carefully positioned and bolted, then tightened with a torque wrench. The power takeoff was reassembled, each bolt and pin carefully replaced and tightened. Finally, she lifted the fully assembled main gear shaft and carefully lowered it back into the cleaned transmission housing, placing a new gasket on top, ready for the housing to be reassembled. First, she uses compressed air to blast away loose dust and grime from the brake assembly. She then carefully removes the heavy brake drum. With the axle spindle exposed, she meticulously cleans off all the old dirty grease with a solvent and rags, ensuring the surface is perfectly clean. She gives the brake backing plate a final wipe down before a second, more thorough cleaning with compressed air, leaving the entire assembly spotless. Next, she turns her attention to the wheel hub. She packs the inner bearing with a generous amount of fresh, high-temperature grease. With a spatula, she lines the inside of the hub with a thick layer of grease to ensure long-lasting lubrication. Back at the axle, she carefully cleans the spindle one last time before installing a brand new oil seal, gently tapping it into place with a hammer and driver for a perfect fit. She installs the inner bearing race, followed by the freshly greased outer bearing. Using a grease gun, she injects more lubricant directly into the bearing rollers until they are fully saturated, then adds another layer by hand for good measure. The heavy hub and drum assembly is then carefully guided back onto the spindle. She greases the smaller outer bearing and installs it, followed by the lock washer and nut, which she tightens to the correct specification. To ensure a weatherproof seal, she applies a bead of black gasket maker before installing the axle flange cap. After tapping the cap into place and installing the final retaining nuts, she makes a final adjustment to the brake system from underneath the truck, completing the comprehensive service. The woman is back under the heavy truck, working on the rear axle. She starts by using a hammer to tap a lock plate away from the pinion nut. Once loosened, she removes the retaining nut and washers. Next, she uses a powerful impact wrench to remove the bolts securing the flange to the differential. With the bolts out, a few taps from a hammer and a pry bar are needed to break the flange free. With the flange removed, she uses pliers to remove the snap ring holding the universal joint caps in place. She then carefully disconnects the entire drive shaft from the differential. The next step is reassembly. She aligns the drive shaft and universal joint to do the final tightening. She systematically works her way around the wheel, torquing each lug nut to the proper specification. After a final check, she lowers the hydraulic jack and the truck is back on all its wheels. She then starts the engine and tests the hydraulic dump bed, which operates smoothly. The repair is complete and the truck is ready to get back to work. Thank you for watching. See you in the next car repair video.